Have you ever stood in a season where it felt like the heavens were made of brass? You look up for a cloud, a sign, a single drop of hope, but there is only heat. Only silence. We live in a world of uncertain times. One day the bank account is full, the next, it's empty. One day the health report is clear, the next, the phone rings with news that stops your heart. But what if I told you that your dry season isn't the end of your story? What if the very moment the water stops flowing is the moment God is preparing a miracle you never saw coming? Today, we are stepping into a story of a man who walked through a literal desert to find a supernatural God. This is the journey of Elijah, a widow, and a God who is known as Jehovah Jireh, the one who sees, and the one who provides. Ancient Israel was in a state of spiritual decay. King Ahab had turned his heart away from the Creator, choosing instead to worship idols that couldn't hear or speak. He thought he was in control. But God raises a voice in the wilderness. A man named Elijah. Elijah, as the Lord lives, there shall be no dew nor rain these years, except at my word. Imagine the weight of those words. In an instant, the economy of a nation was shattered. No rain meant no crops. No crops meant no bread. No bread meant death. Elijah wasn't just predicting a weather pattern, he was declaring an uncertain time for everyone. But here is the secret: when God calls you to speak a hard truth, he also prepares a hidden place for your protection. God tells Elijah, "Get away from here. Hide by the Brook Cherith." Now, picture this. Elijah is sitting by a small stream. The rest of the world is parched, but he has water. But what about food? The Bible tells us something extraordinary. God commanded the ravens to feed him. Think about the nature of a raven. They are scavengers. They are known for being selfish, for taking, not giving. Yet, when God is in the business of provision, he can change the very nature of the world around you. He can take your scavengers, the unlikely sources, the strangers, the ravens of your life, and command them to bring you bread and meat. Are you worried about where your next paycheck is coming from? God isn't limited by your employer. He isn't limited by the economy. If he has to command a bird to bring you a miracle, he will do it. But then, the unthinkable happens. The Bible says, "And it happened after a while that the brook dried up." Wait. Elijah was being obedient. He was in the place God told him to be. Why did the water stop? Listen closely. Sometimes, God allows your brook to dry up because he has a river waiting for you somewhere else. If the brook stayed full, Elijah would have stayed there forever. But God had a greater mission for him. If you are facing a closed door today, if the brook of your comfort, your job, or your current situation has dried up, don't panic. The drying of the brook is the signal for your next move. God sends Elijah to a town called Zarephath. He tells him, "I have commanded a widow there to provide for you." Elijah finds the woman. She isn't a wealthy benefactor. She is a mother at the end of her rope. He asks her for a piece of bread. "Widow, I have nothing baked, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little oil in a jug. I am gathering sticks so that I may go in and prepare it for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die." This is the lowest point. She has accepted death. She has calculated her resources and the math equals 0. But look at what the man of God says: "Do not fear. Go and do as you have said, but first, make me a small cake." It sounds selfish, doesn't it? But it wasn't about the bread. It was about the priority. God was asking her, "Will you trust me with your last so that I can give you my all?" She took a leap of faith. She baked the bread and gave it to the prophet. For 3.5 years, the drought raged outside. People were perishing. But inside that widow's house, the jar of flour was never used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry. When you give God what you have, no matter how small, he puts his super on your natural. He doesn't just provide, he sustains. He doesn't just give a snack, He provides a lifestyle of overflow in the middle of a famine. But the journey wasn't over. Suddenly, the widow's son falls ill and stops breathing. The provision of food was great, but now she needed the provision of life. Elijah didn't give up. He stretched himself over the boy 3 times, a prophetic sign of grace and completion. He cried out to God. And the breath of life returned. This teaches us that God's provision isn't just about your stomach, it's about your soul. It's about your family. It's about your future. He is the God of the pantry, and He is the God of the pulse. In seasons of shaking, the world declares uncertainty. But the child of God is not shaken because our source isn't the world. Our source is the Word. Are you at your Brook Cherith today, waiting for the ravens? Or is your brook drying up? Maybe you feel like that widow, looking at the last of your oil. Then you're in the perfect place for a miracle. Because God specializes in empty brooks and empty jars. Your not enough is His just getting started. So stay faithful. Stay obedient. Your provision is already on its way. If this reminded you of God's faithfulness, share it with someone who needs to know their miracle is next.